Right, Dr. Sharon Fieldstone from Ted Lasso. She is a sports psychologist in the show Ted Lasso. She is the therapist who doesn't get into unethical relationships with ex-clients, unlike... look, I'm a counsellor and a psychotherapist. This is going to be a video breaking down her therapy scenes, what's accurate, what's good work, what's bad work. Hopefully there will be greater things we can pick apart and learn along the way. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll know what to expect. I've made these kind of videos about the film Good Will Hunting. I did one on The Sopranos, which I might continue. It didn't do the best. This video itself is a continuation of an earlier video I did do breaking down Dr. Sharon's scenes from episode 1 of season 2. She didn't get many scenes in that episode, but we talked a bit about Dani Rojas too, and now I'm continuing this. But to summarise that first video, if you didn't watch it, well, I mean, if you want to watch it, it's here, but if you didn't, Dr. Sharon's introduction was slightly mixed for me, as she was professional, well-informed. She seemed to do her direct job of offering one-to-one therapy to Dani very well, not that we are shown the sessions in that episode. What she did less well was handling the network around Dani Rojas, which is always part of the job when you're stepping into an organisation like this, helping them all understand your work, easing their fears, sometimes grounding their hopes, trying to do what you can to make sure no one in the organisation is going to end up sabotaging the therapy somehow. She didn't do the best with that side of the job. She left Ted in particular feeling uneasy and negative towards her role in the team, which is probably there for the sake of TV conflict, but it can very much happen, and therapists need to be aware of these issues so that they don't exacerbate and start affecting the work. We're going to discuss a load of therapy scenes from season 2, episode 2, and possibly 3 and 4, depending on how long this gets. Let's get started. So as I said, episode 1 left us with Ted a bit uncomfortable. One, Ted has a bad history with therapy, which leaves him naturally mistrustful towards Sharon. He has a fear she and the team might just gang up on him. The way he felt his wife and their ex-couple's therapist, Jake, ganged up on him, which can be a common fear, but based on season 3, Ted was probably right. And 2, Ted is at the centre of this organisation. He's been the one people turn to for advice and help with their feelings. Having Sharon suddenly appear to play that kind of role leaves him feeling a bit left out, or at least worrying that might happen. Will I still be needed? There's a great shot of Sharon closing the door on him and Ted feeling rejected. And third, this one I suppose is more from the metaphorical position that the show wants to contrast their characters. Sharon is a threat to Ted's whole approach of management. Ted is all about positivity. We've seen how great that can be, but we will also see it has its flaws. That's a lot of what season 2 is about, really. Now, Sharon, on the other hand, is open and receptive towards negative feelings, wanting to explore them instead of kind of shutting them out in place of positivity. Which isn't to say Ted is constantly suppressing negative emotion, but there is a tendency of him to try and promote this wall of positivity as the focus. The culture he has built at Richmond was born out of that, and so Sharon's general presence might feel like a threat to that from his perspective. Not just work-wise, but also personally to Ted as an individual. What if she has a spotlight that can see behind the wall of positivity? As episode 2 begins, Ted sees her showing up again in the morning and he's confused. She was only brought in to help Dani, and she successfully did that in episode 1 in a single session, so why is she back? Well, realistically, because one session is not enough for Dani. Even if he appears to be better, that's not always how it works, but more so...
I thought Higgins hired up the rest of the season, didn't he?
Ted did not know that. Higgins should definitely have told him, but either way it leaves Ted visibly conflicted.
Should have asked you first, Ted. You're absolutely right.
No, I'm dead wrong. I mean, heck, you're director of football operations. Still, you should have texted me first.
That's 100% true.
No, 1,000% false. I mean, you're a busy man.
It just leaves him in a fluster. Not really about Higgins, that's how it's expressed, but the confusion is A, Ted knows Sharon has a really positive impact on the squads and that is a good thing, but B, he personally is uneasy about her being there. He's trying to talk himself into supporting something that he doesn't want to support. Also, rewinding again to when he sees Sharon appear in the morning, he greets her,
Hey, Doc. Sharon.
Good morning.
That's better. She's professional. She's not the most, I guess, intimate kind of personality, and that's absolutely fine. You know, therapists need to keep a bit of distance in these sort of organisations, and if that's how she is naturally, then it's good to be as she is naturally. Yes, I remember in training actually to be advised that if we work in schools, do not ever have lunch in the staff room because you'll get bombarded by teachers trying to get some inside scoop or sway your opinions or whatever else, which I don't think is necessarily the best advice, but it's true to say they do need a level of distance. But that's a tangent. I criticised Sharon last time for not being confrontational so much, but definitely coming across in a way that Ted and I think Coach Beard saw as confrontational. Sharon doesn't have to be all massively friendly greeting, but a simple, polite good morning is very much needed, rather than last episode ignoring when Ted waves at her. Like, I enjoyed the thread of her story that she's this black woman coming into a predominantly white male environment and needing to assert herself in a lot of ways, but I think they went a bit too far that episode for the sake of contrast and comedy. Why do I raise this point? Well, it's because Ted kind of goes to war with her now. She's here, she's part of the team, Ted can't stop that really, and logically recognises that he shouldn't stop it. Therefore, what can he do instead? Win her round? Have his effect on her? If he's worried about how her presence might affect the team and affect him, get her to relax into the same positive, sometimes overly positive, all singing, dancing, movie referencing atmosphere that he has built the rest of the club with. That's his plan here, but Sharon can't afford to do that because that's not why she's here, so Sharon has to set boundaries. So yes, step 1 of the war, charge into the office with a friendly gift.
Ted Lasso welcome wagon has arrived.
Biscuits and over-friendliness. This is exactly what worked with Rebecca, after all, but Rebecca is a different person and a different role in this team to Sharon.
Please don't barge in here like that. I could have been in a session.
Is obviously a point that needs to be made. You can't have people barging in when you might be seeing someone, for which it's always good practice to put a sign on the door. Something simple like a session in progress, or a do not disturb, or just something so that people know when a session is happening and when it isn't, and when would be a bad time to knock and when would be good. Useful not just to stop people barging in during a session, but also to let people know when they can see you, let them know they're welcome, you know? Perhaps someone does need to have a quick word with her, but there's no sign, so they spend the whole day not sure whether to approach or not. I could easily see Higgins or Nate just dithering at the door, trying to listen in and judge if she's in a session, unsure whether it's safe or not to disturb. That wouldn't be an ideal scenario. As a little tangent, when working with kids, sometimes counsellors might make a do not disturb sort of sign with the kids. Like they can help decorate it in some small way, just so they feel even more so that yes, this is my space for the duration of the session. I have the right to this room. I have this sign that tells other people not to come in. I think if I was to make a sign and put on a door like this right now, I think you definitely know what the sign would be. WorldAnvil is a really cool thing, and they're still sponsoring me till death do us part. Listen to me passionately talk about them. WorldAnvil is an online tool for world building, the anviling of worlds, character creation, campaign building, story planning, and even writing, and a load more stuff that can be great for anyone with creative projects or games. I use it for the planning of my novel. My organisation is chaotic, so WorldAnvil really helps. I love the way you can create timelines of events with hyperlinks from those pages to a character bio or some other event or information or whatever. Like, my memory isn't the best for the minor details of stuff I invent, so when I'm reading back information about the history of my novel's world and I think, who is this person? I can only half remember. Or what order did these events happen in? Why did that become a social custom? Whatever. I can very easily easily click a hyperlink to a different page I wrote and check. The ability to create entire timelines based on your own invented calendars and be able to link everything to it, including changes in the maps for if a city gets destroyed or something like that, that is so damn cool. And there are other tools too. Not all of them are ones I need for my novel personally, but they all still look really handy, and I've always found everything pretty easy to use. If it's your thing, they also have a Discord and they run all sorts of events and community support and stuff, like this summer camp they've been running. It's all really great and I enjoy getting to promote them. So there is a link in the description and there's a pinned comment that entitles you to
51% off. Yep, it's 51 now.
All their subscriptions with the code TREE. If you want to try it out first, they have a free version so you can get familiar, you know, take your time, take it out for a nice dinner and see where things lead. Yeah. WorldAnvil. Right, back to everything after that little interlude. Ted's knocked on the door. Sharon told him not to.
Right, of course. I'm sorry.
Can I help you with something?
The other side of this as well is Ted's struggle to show his negative feelings, for which we learn a lot more about later in the season. Suppressing them, worrying he shouldn't have them, shouldn't be a burden to others. All of it I think makes double the sense when you learn about his father, but this is a defence here, in part, reacting to his negative feelings he has towards Sharon by expressing a somewhat manic level of complete opposite feeling. Not wanting to feel negative, he kind of drowns her and himself in the positivity. Manic is probably a bit of a harsh word, but yeah.
Brought you a little something for your first day of work.
No, thank you.
Oh, come on now. Just try a little bite, huh?
It's a really interesting conflict here. I love it because it's so subtle over such a minor thing that slips by so quickly. Writers in drama often build up massively dramatic things to draw the conflict out of, but here it is something so small as the offer of a biscuit. Ted's is offering an ordinary, friendly, welcome gift. Sharon says no thank you, a little too coldly, I think. It's not actually cold, but I think with the context of who Ted is and how he might take it, she probably could have been a bit gentler here. Like, I don't know, that's very kind of you going through the effort of buying me some biscuits. I appreciate the gesture, but I'm okay. Oh, you didn't buy them, you actually made these yourself. Well, I imagine they taste wonderful, but I don't actually eat sugar. I don't know, but she doesn't say any of that because Sharon is very keen to keep her boundaries, I think. To keep a clear distance between her as a person and the organisation she's joining, which makes sense. And Ted's, because this isn't just about a friendly gesture, this is all about trying to win her round to his way of being. He doesn't accept her declining the biscuits. No, oh okay, sorry, well welcome to the team anyway, nor even like a politely asking why not, but he presses her to eat one. And she gives in then. She kind of has to now. She's pushed into a position where it would look far too rude to say no. I love her expression as she relents. She knows exactly what he's doing.
That's very thoughtful, Coach Lasso. But I don't eat sugar.
Really? Wow. I've never met someone who doesn't eat sugar. Only heard about them. And they all live in this godless place called Santa Monica.
Someone's going to have to tell me what he means about Santa Monica there. But either way, I think there's something unintentionally passive-aggressive about this response now. Sharon has appreciated the thoughtfulness and explains that she doesn't eat sugar, and Ted, via a friendly joke, is still pressing the point. Consciously, I think he's just grasping for things to try and build a rapport with her, but again, this is the kind of, his deeper negativity now sort of leaking through this overwhelming, intense positivity he's trying to drown her with.
Trust me, it's in everyone's best interest. In a past life, I would inhale a Cadbury's flake, talk nonsense for an hour until I pass out.
Okay, so here's the whole point of me going through all of this dialogue here. It's because they do need to find a balance. Sharon has a delicate role, you know, there's the actual one-to-one work with the clients, the setup for that, the expectations, for that stuff is all pretty straightforward. They're a client, you're providing therapy. But this wider organisation with the team manager of Ted, Sharon has to both get him in a more positive, supportive mindset of her work, help him understand it, stop any sides of him that might work against it, break any stigmas about psychobabble, or, you know, help him see that she's not here to undermine his coaching, all of that, but at the same time also set boundaries. For the sake of her very specific role, she can't be a full friend to him, nor does Ted need to be like a coach to her the same way he is with the players or Higgins or any of them. He can kind of just relax here, you know, that's that's fine. So yeah, she needs to be friendly but not too friendly, reserved but not to a level that he feels rejected by it. And I think she's doing a good job here. She's revealed a little something of herself, hinting that she has reasons for not eating sugar well enough for Ted to not need to feel rejected about the biscuits. You know, she's not being mean, it's just a personal boundary she has. And I don't know, is this medical? Is she saying the sugar has a medical effect on her, or is this more she has cravings that she used to get carried away with, and knowing Sharon is someone who very much likes self-control has set this rule for herself as a result. I think it's deliberately quite ambiguous. She doesn't want to get caught up in a long explanation about her past, that's not the focus here, but again, Ted is quite passive-aggressive.
I'm the same way with video games. Something in my life that I really enjoy. But then I pretend to prevent myself from having them and somehow making my life better. But in reality, all I'm doing is depriving myself of something that makes me happy, instead of attempting to adjust my relationship to it.
It's such a well-written scene. There is a conflict between these two characters. Ted can't bear to directly express the conflict, so instead it ends up leaking through all of his aggressive friendliness. He's saying two things in that line, I think, though. One is, I'm really good at self-awareness and understanding emotions, Sharon. You may be a psychologist, but I can go toe-to-toe with you on all of this stuff. You're not needed here. I can play that role quite fine. And the second thing is, it's unhealthy of you that you can't accept my gift of biscuits. Which is a very big judgment to make. We don't fully know why she doesn't eat sugar. Even despite this rule, she still tried the biscuit and thanked Ted for it. If the offer had been wine and Sharon had explained that she didn't drink alcohol, or if it was cigarettes and she didn't smoke, I imagine Ted would be much more understanding. But instead, because he is so eager to win her round, because these homemade biscuits mean so much as a result, it all leaves him feeling far more rejected and far more resentful than he really needs to feel. In a way, this is something that he will gradually learn. My distance is not a personal rejection of you, Ted. It's okay, you can relax. Anyway, before she can respond, he advances again, inviting himself to sit down and slapping her on the knee.
Hey, what's your favorite book?
This is interesting.
What is? Am I answered the fountainhead? I know, curveball, right? But I can explain.
You'll notice how he deflects Sharon's comment and is keen to launch into further conversation before she can stop him, just bombard her. My feelings about Sharon's response here are mixed. What she's about to do is make an interpretation, and as I've said in the past, that can be a very exposing thing to do, to take your behaviour or feelings or whatever else and psychologically interpret what it might mean. Therapists do not charge into doing this. They could get it wrong, it could be painful, and they're not even in a session here anyway. This is just Ted coming in to say hello. It's not okay to start interpreting things there.
No, what you're doing here. This is obviously your way of connecting with new people. Makes sense. It's very disarming.
I mean, she's right, but it's still an invasive thing to say, and again, I don't think her tone is the most, you have to be careful with your tone if you're making an interpretation. You don't want to make it sound like you're judging their behaviour. I don't think she is, but either way, this could hurt Ted. It could feel like an exposing spotlight behind his defences. My feelings are mixed in the sense that I can understand why she says it. She's in danger of being sucked into Ted's world of friendliness. She needs to reassert a level of boundary without rejecting him. But I'm not sure this is the best way. It's all in a very quick moment though, and Ted is being very forceful, so it would be hard to get this right. I don't know what I would do in this situation. I think in the suddenness of the moment, my instinct would probably just be to laugh and be like, no, hang on a minute, I'm supposed to be preparing for work here. You can't get me jabbering away about my favourite books. Is there anything else you needed? I did want to ask, actually, if you'd mind me observing training today and steer the conversation back onto those professional grounds. Maybe even directly comment on the fact that she needs to keep a little bit of distance for the sake of her job. I don't know. Part of me wonders if she says what she says, not just because it draws things back, but also because a little part of her is hurt that he attacked her about not eating sugar. Is this her retaliating without realising it? maybe. In which case, ideally, she would go away and reflect on the session or talk with her supervisor and realise that and go, oh, that's why I did that. That wasn't a good thing to do. And kind of be aware of that for the future and grow from it. But having kind of shut him up, I guess, there, she then steps away to her door, signalling for him to leave, which I also wouldn't do. I would want to take the chance to talk to Ted and help him understand your role more. This is a very good opportunity to do that. If, for whatever reasons, they don't have the time right now, I would give that as a reason for going to the door. You know, I'd like to talk to you again. I'm sorry, but right now I have to prepare for this or whatever.
If it's okay with you, Coach Lasso, I'd like to observe training today. See how everything's functioning.
Obviously, she needs to ask permission to do this. I'm a little confused as to why she wants to, and she really should have explained a bit more, because I have no doubt her presence will make Ted feel like his coaching ability is being judged. You know, why does she need to see how everything's functioning? What is her job here? Is it to provide one-to-one therapy to whatever squad members needed at Richmond, or is she also here in an organisational dynamics capacity? She seems to provide a report of sorts on the way the organisation functions as a whole, but was she hired for that? Is Ted clear on that? What is the hope and the reasoning for it? But either way, she thanks him for agreeing, hands him back the biscuits, and closes the door while he's still talking.
Oh, hey, you know what
I love this scene. Like, we have to accept it is played for a bit of TV and for comic effect. Things like closing the door on him while he's still talking is straight up rude, but I don't think we can take it too seriously in the context of this show. It's generally a really good scene of Ted anxious to win her round and Sharon trying to resist, but not really alleviating her fears yet. More of this I think does follow, but you can tell Ted feels rejected because he immediately goes to Rebecca and complains about Sharon, which again is how very easily negative impressions could start to subtly sabotage the work.
Evidently, she doesn't eat sugar.
What a fucking asshole.
What if Rebecca now grumbles the same way to others, and then that feeds down, and suddenly you have an entire culture here closing its walls against Sharon, rather than being open to the idea of exploring emotions? It'd be pretty exaggerated to say that it all stem from just some simple grumbling here, but it's something to be aware of.
I don't get it. Why pay someone to do what a friend should do for you for free?
Exactly.
I mean, that is it, exactly. Ted doesn't get it. That is a problem Sharon needs to address. And if I said about Ted feeling Sharon's presence is there to judge his coaching ability, on the training ground, Sam storms off in his frustration about Jamie, and Ted says this to her.
He's not normally like this.
Like, Ted, you don't need to explain or feel judged. After him doing that, I would definitely be finding some moment later in the day to pull Ted aside and set him at ease about it and remind him you're not here to judge his work. But let's move on now, shall we? So at the end of the day, Sharon and Ted have an interesting conversation as she readies to leave.
And thank you for letting me observe training today. Some coaches get quite conspiratorial at the notion.
Great thing to say. I even love the way she says it. There's a little flourish of personality now. Would have been a perfect thing to say way back when she first asked permission. You know, do you mind me observing training today? See how everything functions. But anyway, it's good she says it now. The phrasing of some coaches, rather than accusing Ted specifically, is a good way to speak to him without it feeling like an accusation. And also you can be a bit more playful with that, about the idea of coaches being conspiratorial, you know? There's a lot of situations where that kind of phrasing can be really beneficial in the work. I know, like, particularly in work with teenage boys, for example, who want to keep their tough exterior and things like that. Like, say there's a 2-week break in sessions, and when you get back you can gauge some of their feelings about that, and so maybe then you'd like say, I know some people feel like I might have forgotten them over the holiday, or something like that that speaks to what it is they're feeling, but without them having to admit that vulnerability and actually say, yes, that is how I feel, you know? But that's a tangent. So is the one Ted runs on in response to Sharon's comments. And this time Sharon doesn't shut it down. She doesn't really respond either, but she waits and listens, which is a good middle ground. And then she says,
I'll email you and your staff my takeaways when I get home.
Well, hey, come on, let her rip right now.
So Sharon tells him now. I assume there is more detail that will follow in the email later on, but in terms of what she does say here, I think it's worded beautifully.
There's a wonderful atmosphere here. All the employees are thoughtful and kind. and they actually listen to one another.
It leaves Ted feeling good, recognising Sharon is in fact not out to get him, and she's right. Ted has done a great job with the culture of this club in that sense. It leaves him asking the very thing he was always hoping, that Sharon isn't needed, that he does all of that stuff fine by himself.
You think we got ourselves a if it ain't broke, don't fix it situation here or what?
Does everyone agree that being winless with 8 straight draws ain't broke?
There's the point. A point she has to make that, importantly, Ted doesn't take as an attack now. He accepts this because I think it's come after this non-judgmental start, and then he feels that empathy about it.
Yeah.
Heavy is the head that wears the visor, Coach Lasso. You must have a lot on your mind.
Empathy, not judgment. It's not saying the team aren't winning games, you're doing a bad job. It's saying the team aren't winning games, something isn't quite right, that must be a hell of a lot of pressure for you to figure out. That's a key difference. And for anyone not aware, yeah, the team Richmond relegated from the league above down into this championship. They are expected to win promotion again, to be up the top of that table, so 8 games without any wins is a horrendous start to the season. It kind of bothers me how little pressure there is in this season on that. Many managers would probably have been fired by now in reality, but she says it well. She then extends the offer of talking about it sometime, nothing forced, not placing pressure, just letting him know that she's there if he ever needs it.
I hope we get a chance to sit down and talk about it all someday.
This is why Sharon can't just be Ted's friend. She can't let herself get too caught up in all this attack of friendliness and positivity, because her role here might be to support him as much as to support the players. And that could mean directly in a sense of the therapy session she later provides for him, yes, but even beyond that, just a figure who can professionally support the whole squad in that general capacity of sports psychologist. And again, also because I think Ted's friendliness might then affect her general attitude and how she works within this culture as a whole and what her cultural influence could be. You know, Sharon is quite subtle about the point there, but there is a problem at Richmond right now. They have had 8 winless games, and yet nobody is actually thinking about that. Ted is pretending the problem doesn't exist. That itself is the problem, right? His philosophy is all about belief, but at what point does that derail into denial? He talks in episode 5 about Rom-Communism, about how things always work out in rom-coms.
If all those attractive people with their amazing apartments and interesting jobs, usually in some creative field, can go through some lighthearted struggles and still end up happy, then so can we. It will all work out. Exactly as it's supposed to.
There's a thin line, isn't there? The team needs to be able to let go of their stress and fear and just focus on the game. Things almost always work better in sport when they can reconnect to the joy, hence Isaac needing to go back to his roots to have fun playing football in order to get over his own mental block. So that is important, but denial isn't always exactly handling that stress and feeling free so much as it is like contorting yourself in uncomfortable ways in order to avoid it, if that makes sense. It's its own mental strain. And generally I think this is Sharon's effect on the team, to say yes, there is a benefit at the heart of what Ted's saying, all of that is important. I don't want to change the culture here, because around the pitch you do need to feel free and positive, but away from it I can provide a space for some of the negative feelings so that you can then feel more positive. I don't think you overcome a lot of this team's block just by focusing on positivity. I think you need to give them some safe space for the negative feelings as well, so that the positivity does feel less forced and less like its own mental strain to stay positive. I've expressed that horrifically, but Sharon and Ted can support each other in that way. We're going to quickly talk about episode 3 now. Not too much happens there therapy-wise, so it's going to be a relatively short section, which is ideal because this is already longer than I intended, and we're going to finish after that. And then maybe I'll do a follow-up video on the rest if people are keen. So at the end of episode 2, Jamie Tartt re-signs for Richmond FC, and the players aren't what you'd call happy about it. They probably do need someone new to come in and add a new dimension to their play, someone who can give the team a bit of a mental boost that could help. However, Jamie was a dick to them, so he's not the obvious choice initially. Jamie's appearance disrupts morale. None of the players like or trust him, and Jamie doesn't know how to win them round or resolve anything. He contemplates trying to buy them PS5s each.
You know what we gotta do?
Get Dr. Sharon.
What? No.
Yes, get Dr. Sharon. That's exactly what her role is perfect for. However, he is still uneasy about it. As such, he at first opts to solve the trouble himself by being led Tasso. Disastrous tactic, by the way, which is again why he and Sharon need to be able to work together. Ted opts for this tactic of acting like an arsehole to unify the team against him rather than against Jamie.
Congratulations, Isaac. That smart mouth of yours just earned you and the entire team 10 laps. Is anybody on this pitch interested in not sucking at soccer? Oh, guess what? Make it 1,000 laps. That's your fault, too.
It's so obviously a ploy, that's so obviously not genuine. It's never going to work as a result. It makes Ted much more inauthentic rather than someone they trust. He runs the risk of shaming the players and demotivating or alienating them. And it does nothing to counteract the fact that the team have good reasons for disliking Jamie. Of course it doesn't work. Sharon, who still seems to be watching the team train, she makes the obvious point to Ted.
Has it ever worked?
There could be a danger were Sharon to start trying to tell Ted how to do his job. I'm glad she doesn't, but she subtly points out that Ted should not keep going with this tactic of led Tasso. I wonder if she could ask Ted if maybe he'd want her to help at all. Maybe she does, and Ted maybe says no, I've got this, I can handle Jamie. But as it happens, Keeley gets things going. Because Jamie, unable to handle the situation with the team, goes to talk to Keeley about it.
Just super frustrated because I don't know how to let the team know I'm cool now.
She takes him to visit Sharon.
They want to be little bitches about actually having someone on a pitch who can score a goal. And what? Am I supposed to just walk around with my head down?
Jamie has apologised to everybody, and he has also grown enough to not behave much as he did in Season 1. That is all good. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that he fully empathises with the hurt he caused. I think Jamie is capable of that empathy, but that the problem is, A, he knows he's a brilliant player on a technical level, probably the best on the team, and he tends to use that ego to keep himself going, and B, Jamie has been humbled in quite uncomfortable ways. Going on Love Island to anger his dad, but ruining his entire career in the process, being completely dropped by Man City, failing to find another team, which is a little bit unrealistic, going back to another club who he wrongly believed didn't want him, and finding out all the players seem to hate him, and kind of having to persuade Ted to sign him. That's not easy, especially for someone who isn't humble by nature, and whilst he takes it and he apologises and he doesn't lash out, you can see he's a little defensive about it. I'd imagine that stops him empathising enough to really see for himself how he can connect again, something you can't just do with an apology or with cracking a joke or buying them PS5s, but actually supporting them as people. That's the bit where it makes the difference. So Keeley takes him to Sharon and we get this short exchange.
This is Dr. Fieldstone. She's a brilliant therapist, and, unlike me, she actually gets paid to listen to you complain.
Complain seems a little unfair, but yeah, Jamie has a lot he needs to vent right now. Sometimes it is hard to empathise without first venting your feelings somewhere. I imagine Sharon gives him that space, that she hears him on how difficult the entire humbling experience has been, and probably helps him to lower some of that defensiveness.
So what, do I just sit here and blabber on and on about myself?
Basically.
Nice.
Jamie is one of those straightforward examples of a client who is ready to just talk straight off the bats, and you don't need to worry as much about easing things in. That comes with its own difficulties, but for now it's good. It wouldn't surprise me if the specific problem he has is solved quite quickly following one session. Again, we don't actually see any of the therapy, so it's remarkable I myself have blathered on and on so much, but generally I quite like that, I think. How long it takes before the show reveals anything of Sharon's therapy work. We follow Ted's perspective on a lot of this exclusively, which means we kind of don't need to know what's happening in these sessions. It's enough to know that it is happening, that Jamie is having these sessions, or Danny is, or Colin, or whoever else. It's like parents don't need to know what their kids talk about, or partners, or whatever. We don't necessarily need to be a fly on the wall, and I think that's quite positive for what the show suggests. But yes, we've come to a rather abrupt abrupt end with the video now. It is very abrupt, and we haven't extracted a greater meaning beyond just, like, picking apart the scenes like I was hoping to. Sometimes that happens with my videos. Like, I like them best when I feel like there's something I'm taking away too, but I'm not gonna try and force something like that if nothing has jumped out at me. I think there is a lot further to go with analysing this stuff in the show though. There are more boundary concerns ahead, there are Ted's therapy sessions, there is the way she handles closure, and then everything in season 3, which you might know some of my feelings about. I don't know. I'd like to make another video on this. If this does well, that next video will probably come quite quickly. If it doesn't, then I don't know, it's possible you might end up waiting a while for it. That's often been the case with series I've started excitedly only for them to fall flat. I still intend to finish all of those kind of series. It's just like a matter of finding a good time where it doesn't disrupt my luck in the algorithm. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what I've forgotten to mention, gotten wrong, missed completely. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe, maybe even support me on Patreon, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Luke Core, Treat You Caber, Michael Gallagher, Flying Spider, Kellyanne Davidson, Billy Lee Myers Jr., Samara Salsi, Joshua C. Follier, Chad Bramwell and Michael Hart. Thank you.